The next component of the assignment is the performance objectives section. And if you look at the assignment requirements document, you'll see that it requires for each instructional goal, you have to include a terminal objective and then a performance and subordinate objectives chart. So regarding the terminal objective, if you remember, the textbook says that you basically take the goal, and the goal is written by including the performance context, the learner, the behavior or content, and the tool, and all of that is written in a statement. But when you write the objective, the authors tell you that the performance context actually turns into the condition. And they further give you ideas on what types of conditions are applicable to right here. So sometimes it's a cue or a stimulus. What needs to happen before the learner can perform the action? Or what kinds of resource materials the learner would use? Or what are the delimiters of the task that control for the complexity? And also, what kinds of things will aid in transfer? And here is where it gets complicated, because after the authors tell us you take the goal, change the performance context for the condition, and you have an objective, then they say, oh yeah, and one of the things that you can use as a condition is the same performance context. So you'll see it's kind of complicated, kind of not. But I'm hoping this visual will help you realize that. So your condition is the condition prevalent at the time of the students performing the task. And then the learner, but don't just say the learner, be a little bit more specific. Are they math teachers? Are they customer service representatives? Are they sixth graders? Are they junior professors? The next thing is the behavioral content, and remember that this must be a measurable action. So know is not accepted, understand is not accepted, learn is not accepted, feel is not accepted. Tell me what action will allow you to know that they know, or that they understand, or that they learn, or that they feel. And finally, there's the criterion in the terminal objective, which is not one of the components in the goal. And for the criterion, you can add quantitative or qualitative criteria. Now, if you notice, the tool in the performance goal is not applicable anywhere here, except that it can be one of those resource materials that you list as part of the condition in the terminal objective. So you basically repurpose it. If you use the tool in the goal, you repurpose it as part of the condition in your terminal objective. Regarding the criterion that you will enter, this is a tricky part, and one of the difficulties I noticed in the discussion board last week. When you have an intellectual skill and verbal information tasks with only one correct response, then your criterion can be the word correctly, and that's fine. So you say that they will cite the US state capitals correctly. That is fine. There's only one capital. You should know that one capital. It's information that you remember, and that's the end of it. Now, when you have an intellectual skill or verbal information that doesn't necessarily have a perfect correct response, then you determine the tolerance level. And this is, for example, students were going to determine a measure and they had a margin of error. Anytime that you have to indicate a margin of error that is acceptable for the correct response, notice it's not perfect, there's a range in the possibilities there, then you use what tolerance level is, or what that margin of error is. When you have intellectual skills and verbal information tasks with possible multiple correct answers, for example, an instructional design, there's no single way to do it. There's as many ways of doing it as there's people doing it. Then you indicate the features that must be present for it to be correct. And those features in the textbook are defined as many things, like, for example, the form that the item must take, the function that it must have, or sometimes the aesthetics of it. Then when you have psychomotor skills for a criterion, you may use again the features that must be present for it to be correct. or a frequency count, how many times they have to do it in order for you to be able to determine that they achieve the objective, or the time limits within which they have to perform the skill. And again, for attitudes, you can use a frequency count. How many times did you see that the student recycled? The features that must be present for it to be correct. Again, the same applies as before. And then for the performance and subordinate objectives chart, you're basically going to use a 2-column table where in the first column you're going to enter either your instructional goal step or the subordinate skill, and on the right column you're going to enter either the performance objective or the subordinate objective. And notice that for these two kinds of objectives, the parts of the objective are the same. The only difference is that the performance objective is written for the instructional goal step and the subordinate objective is written for the subordinate skill step. Use the same numbering system that you used in your goal analysis and subordinate and enter skills analysis diagram so that these things are organized.